Yes, thank you so
And,
much.
oh, I beg your pardon, I forgot to mention your partner in this thing, Ameer. So you can say a couple of words for her. Thank you, Maya. Come.
All right. Uh, Ameer is from Pakistan, so Ameer will be talking about the same community that I'm talking about, the Sindhi community in Diaspora, whereas Ameer will be talking about a small minority of the Sindhi community in Sindh in Pakistan. So the Sindhi community has, and I'm talking about the Sindhi Hindu community, because we also have a Sindhi Muslim community and a Sindhi Christian community. So my focus is on the Sindhi Hindu community because they have had a history with the partitioning of the Indian subcontinent in 1947. The Sindhi Hindus had to flee their homeland, Sindh, and move to different parts of India, and then from India to different parts of the world. So they are a community in diaspora with no homeland of their own. Although there are about 2.5 million of Sindhi Hindus in India, they don't have a homeland or a territory or a region of their own in India. So they are found in different parts of the world, and many studies have been conducted of the Sindhi Hindus in Philippines, in Hong Kong, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in Singapore, and even in London. And some of these studies go far back to 1969, where Professor Kupchandani did a study of the Sindhi Hindu community in India. And he also said that the community was shifting away from Sindhi to Hindi, whereas other researchers in other parts of the world, like Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, have found that the Sindhi community has shifted to the English language in these countries that they have moved to. In Spain, in different parts of Spain, they have shifted to the Spanish language. So they seem to have shifted to the dominant language of the country they have moved to, but not only the language of the country they have moved to, but to an international language, English. So in this paper, our interest, our focus, because a lot of studies have already shown that the Sindhi Hindus in diaspora have shifted away from the Sindhi language, but we want to know why this happened. And in contrast, Ameer will be telling you about the small minority of Sindhi Hindus in Sindh who did not flee the country, who still remained in their homeland, and he will be investigating reasons why they are maintaining their language. So we have Sindhis, Hindus in diaspora shifting away from their language, and Sindhi Hindus in Sindh in Pakistan who are maintaining the language. Now, why has this happened? That was the interest of this paper. Why have the Sindhi Hindus in diaspora shifted away? And I was very fortunate. I'm now moving to methodology. I was very fortunate. Sorry, it's not this slide, but I was very fortunate to find a book recently published just this year by a lady known as Sas Agrawal. And Sas Agrawal actually asked many Sindhis, at least 60 Sindhis in different parts of the world, what their identity was. That was the main issue of the question that Sas asked. And in their stories, their first-hand accounts, they tell us the reasons. In the process of telling what is their identity, they also provide reasons why they have shifted away from the Sindhi language. And so for me, it was an interesting way of collecting data from first-hand accounts which had been published. Now, many of these accounts were memories, but there were also some academic writing on why there had been a shift away from the Sindhi language by these Sindhis in different parts of the world. So that was my methodology. Now, Ameer will tell you the methodology he used for the Sindhi Hindus in Sindh. Ameer, please.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for introducing the background and your part of methodology. Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So I will continue from this slide. In addition to using the data from the book that ma'am discussed, we also used a survey questionnaire, online interviews, and social media. Our survey questionnaire was consisted of 16 questions. 6 questions dealt with the participants' background, while 10 questions dealt with the central themes of language shift and maintenance. The questions that we asked were open-ended, and they helped us in getting detailed answers. The questions were written in English, and these were developed using Google survey forms. These were posted through Facebook groups and emailed to relevant participants and shared via WhatsApp. The questionnaire also carried description in English and Romanized Sindhi, briefing participants about the purpose of the survey. In total, we had 17 participants, and 82% were males and 17% were females. Their age was around 20 to 40 years of age, and none of the participants was above 40 years of age. Next slide, please. This slide shows the districts which are located in Sindh, and the participants belong to these districts. They provided through different sources data who belong to these districts. Next slide, please. In addition to conducting survey questionnaire, we also interviewed 4 male participants by using mobile phone calls due to COVID situation. During our interviews, we used Sindhi language and recorded the interviews with the permission of the participants. The relevant questions were asked in Sindhi language, and later these were transcribed and translated into English. After asking the participants about their background, we asked related questions. In addition to these interviews, we also held conversations through WhatsApp, and each conversation was about 30 to 40 minutes. In total, 4 conversations took place. Also, these conversations took place in the Sindhi language. We later on codified and qualitatively analyzed the data.
Thank you, Ameer.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. So now I move on to why the Sindhis in diaspora have shifted away from their mother tongue, from their heritage language. And what the methodology, as I explained, is different in both contexts, but the objective is the same. We wanted to know what were the attitudes of the community, the Sindhi Hindu community, towards their language and towards the notion of shifting away from their language, or in the case of the Sindhi Hindus in Sindh in Pakistan, of maintaining their language. So we have the same community with the same religious background in different parts of the world, one still in their own traditional homeland, one with no homeland of their own. And we notice that the ones in diaspora had shifted away, the ones in Sindh were still maintaining their language, although there are other languages used in Sindh like Urdu and English and so many. There are actually 70 other languages being used in Pakistan. So let me move on to the Sindhi Hindus in diaspora. And the analysis actually comes from their memories and their stories in the book that I mentioned. And you will get all these details, not only here, but also in the publication. So the main research objective was to look at the attitude of the community. We have already determined that they have shifted. We have already determined that they are still using their language in Sindh, but in diaspora they have shifted. But we want to know why. What causes a community to either shift or to maintain a language? And so, although many studies look at whether a community has maintained or shifted, we wanted to know why. I think it's very important to know the attitude of a community towards its language. So in this segment, the Sindhi Hindu diasporic community's attitude towards their language and reasons for shift are analyzed, tabulated, and discussed to demonstrate why they shifted. So the first reason is positive attitude towards assimilation. And this actually comes from reading the 60 writings of different Sindhi Hindus in different parts of the world and going through this 450-page volume to extract the reasons that they themselves provided. So the voices are shown in this table. The language attitude of the first generation. I won't read everything, but I'll just read some of the more pertinent things. Suresh says, my father attended classes to learn Hindi, as all government employees were required to possess Hindi. Sindhi was beginning to fade from our lives. Now, Suresh is the second generation. His father was the first generation who fled Sindh due to the partitioning of the Indian subcontinent. And his father had to find a job. And to find a job, he had to learn Hindi in India as a civil servant. Kusum said, due to the jolt of partition, many of us lost our language. My parents were busy settling down and keen to give us a convent education. In the process, they did not concentrate on teaching us Sindhi. So to make a living, they had to work. So the focus was not Sindhi, the focus was earning a living. And so I am not reading all the responses, but the responses in this table 1 showed that generation 1 of Sindhis, influenced by the prospect of getting good jobs, quality education in the convent schools where English was used, and mitigating the negative economic effects of the partition, shifted to Hindi or other languages. Many Sindhis in India shifted to the Hindi language because its knowledge was compulsory to get a good job. Many among them sent their children to convent schools where English was used as a medium of instruction. So here we see that the focus was earning a living, and language helped them to earn a living. And so there was language shift from Sindhi to English or Hindi among community members of the first generation. The second major reason that was discovered by going through the stories in this book was there were negative social attitudes by others to the Sindhi community. In their new countries, mainly in India, the Sindhi Hindu refugees faced negative social attitudes towards their language, towards their culture, towards their identity. And these negative attitudes caused language shift among the community. So this is shown in table 2. In table 2, I won't read everything, but just some of the main things. And Dharmendra Tolani, a second generation, says one of his teachers, when he was a young boy in a school in India, one of his teachers, not a Sindhi, said, you should be ashamed of yourself eating with a Sindhi. though you are not a Sindhi. And this was the teacher telling a non-Sindhi who was sitting next to Dharmendra. So here, these kind of attitudes towards the Sindhi community resulted in them trying to hide the fact that they were Sindhis, and by moving away from the Sindhi language. So, you know, Dharmendra said at that time, Sindhis were known as beggars because they had come to India as refugees running away from their one-time homeland. Sindhis are thieves too, people used to say. So people made fun of us, says Atul Katari. And Nina Sabdani says, for long I had to hide my Sindhi identity out of fear and mortification. So these are the kind of comments by second generation Sindhis because of the attitude that parents and they as young children face. So many of the Sindhis, both young and senior, were looked down by other communities in India who saw them as refugees who had come to take their livelihoods. Many negative traits like beggary, kleptomania were associated with the community, and such negative attitudes towards the Sindhi were also held by some teachers who prevented students of other communities from socializing with the Sindhis. Even Sindhi names and clothes were seen as symbols of cultural degradation, causing the Sindhis not to disclose their identity in public. Living such a life, the Sindhis hope to be socially accepted by the host community of India. I
Maya,
move on.
Maya, sorry
Yes,
to interrupt. You have only a few minutes left. If you could try and conclude.
yeah, but Ameer will also have to do a short one of the Sindhi Hindus and why they maintain their language. So I'll move to the last one very quickly, the urge for cosmopolitanism. And here again, you have a table. And in this table, we see that they say we don't care. Wherever we are in that part of the world, we have to make a living. We must grow up to be the lords of a minor locality. We must grow up to be princes of the world, not members of a minor community. So they were the urge to become part of the world community, not a small ethnic community. So I now move on, or rather, Ameer will tell us why the Hindus, Sindhi Hindus in Sindh maintain their language. Ameer, you'll have to go fast.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. I'm going through the main points quickly. As ma'am Maya discussed how the Sindhis shifted away from their own language, I am going to discuss why the members of the same community have maintained their own language in a different context. The first reason is emotional reason. Participants said that it's their mother tongue. They have been speaking with from centuries this language. They love their language. They easily express it. That's why they have maintained it. And it's a language that they use with their family, relatives, and guests. In addition to emotional reasons, there were some economic reasons that the speakers of the Sindhi language have maintained it in the work domains. For example, some participants said that because everyone who works with them is a Sindhi, that's why they speak Sindhi language. And some of them said that it creates nearness with their clients, so they prefer using it. Additionally, some said that our customers speak it, that's why we speak it, so that they can buy more and more things from us. So these were the economic reasons associated with maintaining the Sindhi language in Sindh's context.
Could you finish in 2 minutes? Yeah, sorry. Could you finish in 2 minutes?
Okay. Ma'am Maya would like to conclude this presentation.
Right. And so there are other reasons, but you can read them in the published paper. There are cultural reasons for maintaining the Sindhi language in Sindh. There are political reasons, and these are all given to you in detail with their voices of the respondents. But I'd like to go to the last paragraph or the conclusion. This research has investigated language shift and maintenance among Sindhi Hindus living in different countries. It is clear that the diasporic Sindhi Hindu community shifted away from the habitual use of their language due to economic, political, educational, and social reasons. Many diaspora participants' narratives taken from Sas Agrawal's 2020 book were analyzed to demystify reasons for language shift. In contrast, the minority Sindhi Hindus living in Pakistan's Sindh province chose to maintain their language because, among other reasons, their Sindhi Muslim brother also speak the same language. Both the Sindhi Hindus in Sindh and in other countries are minority communities, but the former are aware of the large majority of Sindhi Muslims in Sindh. This too, though not mentioned directly by the participants, could be a reason for maintenance. The use of the Sindhi language is, however, mentioned indirectly as a reason for maintaining unity. So the Sindhi Hindus of Sindh in Pakistan maintained their language because the majority around them were also Sindhis, but of a different religion. They were Muslims. So for unity's sake, they maintained their language. This research adds to the knowledge of language shift and maintenance with respect to the Sindhi Hindu community living in different countries. And although they live in different countries, they are minorities both in Sindh and in Diaspora. Thank you so much. If you have questions, we will be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Maya.